Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome back to another on-the-road video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com. Today, we will be showing you how to remove and replace the clutch assembly on this Frigidaire top-load washing machine. Now, let's begin your repair. Stop. Before beginning any repair, always be sure to disconnect the power to the appliance. It is also recommended to test the outlet for the proper voltage. Remember to also turn off the water. Generally speaking, you can tip the washing machine back in order to access these components, but for video purposes, we have went ahead and laid it down so that we can see everything good and make sure that we get all the tape off. Now, each one of these components, unfortunately, are hardwired. A lot of machines will have it where they just have a Molex connector. You can pop it off and then you take off the actual component and replace it. We have a motor, we have the clutch shifter mechanism, we also have the drain pump here. All of these components, unfortunately, do not have a Molex. Every single one is hardwired. So, to start each one of these repairs, there's a couple of necessary steps that we will have to take in order to remove the pieces. Starting with removing strain relievers, we will have to remove the tape from the wiring harnesses to separate them, as well as the top here has a bag that has all of the Molex connectors to the hardwired components. So, to begin, we'll first start to cut the first strain reliever here. Now, I would recommend leaving it on here. You can just pop it off, but good thing is, if we leave it on here, you can see exactly where the zip tie was at. So afterwards, you can go through, replace any type of zip ties that you cut so that the wiring harnesses aren't just dangling. So we'll go ahead and cut that one. Next, I recommend finding a tape seam. Once you find the seam, start to unravel your wiring harnesses here. Make sure you have electrical tape in any one of these jobs, as it is highly recommended to rewrap them so that nothing can get snagged. Okay. So as you can see, now we can see where each one of these are distributed. This will be good to follow the wire. So if you got the motor wire, we have the white one. You have two black ones, one for the drain pump, which is here, one for the clutch assembly, which is here. Now the strain reliever on the back here, we're gonna have to use something to kind of pry it apart. Pop it apart. You may break it. This one, I did kind of pop it apart and it snapped, just plastic. There's also one zip tie at the top. I will carefully use my cutters to pop it apart. Once again, leave it in place so that you can see exactly where it was. You will have to remove this white foam. Going around it is sort of an adhesive, so start to peel it apart. That way we can have better access to all of our wiring harnesses. Wow, it's actually stuck in here. So now that we have that, we will untie our bag at the top and we'll drop it down a little bit. Now this bag is to prevent moisture from going on the wiring harnesses, and it also is held on with tape. So unravel the tape, drop the bag down. Now we have clear access to a whole heap of wiring harnesses. Now that we have the wires separated, the tape off, and we can access all of the components, we can now take a look at the shifting mechanism. Now, the idea behind the shifter is it has a cable that pulls. It will cause the transmission to either drop down to agitate or spin or whatever it needs to do. Now, if this is broken, which is the more common thing you'll find, then obviously it'll have to be replaced. Sometimes you can hear clicking noises and It'll almost get jammed up inside, and it may not be moving whenever it's supposed to be shifting between agitate and spin. So, if you have to remove the component, we have two large Phillips bolts on here. Simply take these off. Pull these out. Next, drop down your cable. If it is still intact, you'll see it has this circular washer on here. This is what stops it inside the actual transmission. If you want to look and see kind of how it's working, you can push the transmission assembly back and forth to see what's happening. If there's a problem with the transmission, that may need to be replaced. But today, we'll replace the shifter, start to pull it down, and obviously follow the wiring harness. Go up, we have one Molex here, pop it down, and set the shifter aside. When installing your new shifter, first, let's go ahead and reinstall the wiring harness so we're not fighting to find that later. Clip it back into place. Next, bring the shifter into place. We will put the cable inside. Make sure your washer goes inside. Set up into position. Lay up your first bolt and start to tighten it. Before you crank it all the way down, just make sure that the other hole is lined up. But once you crank it down, it should stay in place. Reinstall the second bolt. Now we can fix back up our wiring. Now that we have finished any repairs we need to do underneath, obviously the time has come to fix our wiring. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm going to try my best to demonstrate how I would do it out in the field. So basically, first we want to remove this strain reliever. I'm going to use a tack puller, just kind of pop it out of there. Pop that up. See how much room we have. It's going to be difficult to get a zip tie in it. Let's try to get it started. Okay, there's a little bit of a problem. We'll put a tack puller inside of it and try to get it out through the side. Well, it doesn't seem like the zip tie is going to go through with the tack puller. I'm going to try a small flat blade screwdriver. So let's see if I can't weave this through here. So we got it started, at least out, so we have something to bite onto. And what we want to do is pull this all the way so that the head gets to the end. Be careful your wiring if you're pulling it like I am. You don't want to accidentally cut a wire. So just keep feeding. That's pretty good. We'll pull it all the way to the end so that we can trim the excess. Let's start to bundle the wiring up right here on this portion of the harness. A lot of this stuff is going to get taped up and put inside the bag at the top. So let's just get a nice little strand of tape started. Start to wrap it up. And I don't think there's any rhyme or reason or any type of way that you should do this. You're just trying to make sure it's just not flopping around. So we'll give it a nice amount of tape here. Pop it off. The harnesses are just kind of dangling there, so let's go ahead and zip tie this one up. Now, I used a quick release zip tie, probably not a bad idea, so if you need to take it back off, you can take it back off and mess with it, and you don't have to try to weave another one in. Now, let's pull this up, see how much slack we got on all this stuff. There should be quite a bit. All right. Get a nice little hunk of this. Make sure we have all the Molexes that we had previously. Keep pulling, try to get as much slack as you can. All right, a nice little bundle there. Let's tuck it back in this bag. I'll get this old tape off. Tuck it back in the waterproof bag here. Make sure the bottom of the bag is pulled all the way down. You want it to kind of have a neck on it. And the reason why you want that is because you're going to tape around that as well. This is to hold it so that the bag doesn't fall off. We'll get a nice little strip. Start to wrap it around. And you don't have to do it too tight, because if for some reason you put too much in here and you didn't give yourself enough slack when you're trying to mount it, you need to be able to pull some of the wiring out. So as you can see, mine's tugging a little bit. I'll just pull it down some without pulling it all out. That actually is fitting up there perfect. So we'll mount it up. Bring around our tie. Give it a couple of twists. This is just to kind of secure it to the wall. If you want to wrap this cloth around it, you can. I don't think it's going to stick too well. No. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a little bit more electrical tape just to make it nice and neat. And this is far from perfect. Obviously, do it however is going to work best for you. But just make it look nice and neat up there. We don't want wires hanging down and have the possibility of getting caught on one of the shocks or anything like that where it could strip it down and short it out. That looks good. I'm comfortable with that. We'll pop the bottom wire. Even though our strain reliever is broken, you kind of get the point. We'll pop it in place. If it wasn't broken, make sure you bring it over, snap it in place. A little ground strap is hanging down some, so I'm going to use another zip tie. And I'm just going to bring it around this entire harness one more time to hold anything that is kind of sticking out. Pull that ground strap through so it's not dangling. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave it at that. Cut off the excess from our zip ties. Now we can tip the washing machine back up, and that will complete your repair. Thank you for watching another quality video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com.